Hello and welcome to a new backcountry snowpack summary for the North Shore Mountains, brought to you by North Shore Rescue on Friday, January 7, 2022. The week started with an avalanche cycle, a little bit as expected. By the time Monday morning rolled around, we had about 60 centimeters of new snow that wasn't really resting very well on the old surface. And there was numerous avalanches reported up to size 2 on the Mountain Information Network. Unfortunately, one of those avalanches was also an involvement where the subject sustained some significant injuries. So, a quick recovery to that person and best of luck. That also brings me to talk a little bit about avalanche terrain and trees. A lot of people feel that when they're skiing in the forest that they're not in avalanche terrain, when in fact an easy rule of thumb to remember is if you're still having fun skiing, those trees are really too far apart to really hold the snow in place, and therefore they become terrain traps. So even a small avalanche through the trees can actually cause some trauma. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. As the week progressed, the avalanche activity settled down and the skiing was actually really quite good if you pick your terrain carefully. And then the honeymoon came to a crashing stop quicker than if the bride had picked some bad seafood at the buffet yesterday when freezing rain happened. And now we have this pretty nasty crust on the surface. So going into the weekend, we're not really expecting big avalanche activity. However, the traveling is fairly treacherous, and probably snowshoes are certainly a better choice if you want to roam around the mountain this weekend. So if you want to know a little bit more about the snowpack and that interface that caused the avalanches early in the week, stick around for the snowpack discussion. This week we picked a profile site on a roughly west-facing aspect at around 1100 meters on Black Mountain. And we chose this aspect because it was similar to some of the min reports that we got from fairly sizable avalanches that happened on Mount Strachan early in the week. So what we have in the snowpack here, this is essentially the storm snow from this week. This was the snow that was causing the avalanche cycle early in the week. In this profile site, there's about 78 centimeters of it. The top, of course, is now covered with that freezing rain crust that formed yesterday. And there's also a fair bit of just straight up rain that came with that. So the top 30 centimeters of the snowpack is pretty moist with this sort of laminated crust on top, which really doesn't make for very great skiing, unfortunately, in the backcountry today. This storm snow here, that 70 centimeters that date from last weekend, was sitting on a pretty weak interface that we talked about last week. And, as expected, it did produce some avalanches up to size 2 early in the week, sort of Monday, Tuesday. Since then, the avalanche activity has settled down a little bit, and that interface seems to be gaining a little bit of strength. So the avalanche activity has come down, and if we try to test that layer with snowpack tests, we're not really getting very consistent result. Below that, everything is fairly well settled, and I'm anticipating that this layer here is just going to continue to gain strength with the weather forecast that we have. So it's supposed to be a fairly benign weekend. Weather-wise, we might get a little bit of dust on crust maybe over the weekend, but certainly nothing to really completely cover and make that crust on the surface disappear. And as we go into next week, unfortunately, freezing levels go up again, and it looks like we might actually get some rain Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So we're not expecting huge avalanche activity this weekend. However, still be cautious when you go out. It's definitely conditions to twist knees and hurt yourself. It's probably also a good opportunity to encourage the local ski hills and go hit some groomers, because the skiing in the backcountry right now is really not all that great. So until next week, stay safe and have fun.